Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. Today we have a manga review of chapter 879, one of Big Mom's three sweet commanders, Charlotte Katakuri, and that is far too long a title, but it was a pretty damn cool chapter, so let's get into it. And we've been well and truly beaten down from the Luffy high we ended with last week. Katakuri is absolutely dominating him. Katakuri is Luffy on steroids, not only matching but surpassing Luffy's techniques with replicas of his own. Actually, Katakuri has assumedly been active longer than Luffy, so I guess Luffy's techniques are the replicas technically. In this chapter we have Gatling Gun versus Gatling Gun, and even Katakuri's version of Gear 3rd with armament Haki to boost. Everything he does is bigger, better, and much more effective, and I really like that even in the less obvious situations, Katakuri dishes out exactly what he received from Luffy. Like when Luffy used a Hawk Stomp, which, by the way, can we just talk about that? Since when can he use Red Hawk on his legs? That's something I completely even missed in the first reading, but looking back on it, we have never seen that before. But to get back to the point, Katakuri dodges him, and then chooses to counter with a kick of his own, just adding a little bit of insult to injury there. So it's looking like a terrible mirror matchup for Luffy here, with a fruit that might be considered his superior. Kind of like how Akainu's Magma Fruit is the superior of Ace's Flame Fruit, or Mark Weiss's Tonton Fruit being the superior of Miss Valentine's Kilo Kilo Fruit. So I think that might be what we're seeing here, and it's looking entirely possible that Luffy may not emerge victorious as I thought he would last week. Although what is for sure going to happen is for him to learn from this experience, and for Katakuri to inadvertently teach Luffy how to use his devil fruit better and become heavily upgraded in preparation for the Wano arc. Like, even if he loses to Katakuri here, I bet he's going to come out of this with the battle knowledge of someone worth over 1 billion berries. But what I love most about this fight is that Katakuri is back to using his foresight ability the way it should be used. I've been complaining over the last several chapters about that neglected aspect of him, because it seems that if it's convenient for the story for him to not be able to see the future all of a sudden, then he doesn't. And it really shouldn't work like that. The guy should be a permanent threat, and that's exactly what this chapter gives us. He predicts Luffy's moves with ease and uses that information to match his attacks. And of course the question lingering in my mind is if Katakuri has a way to match Gear 4th. Given that they have extraordinarily similar fruits and Katakuri seems to be more advanced than Luffy, he may very well have his own Mochi version of Gear 4th. Although the properties of Mochi and Rubber are quite different, in my mind Mochi rips really easily because, it's a food, which has been shown happening to Katakuri when his body gets kind of torn apart in that very Logia-esque way. So maybe Mochi properties simply won't have the endurance to stretch itself to the point of becoming super bouncy and achieving a Gear 4th style transformation. Although here's an evil thought. Let's say that Luffy uses Gear 4th and Katakuri actually learns something from him and creates a makeshift version of his own to continue thrashing Luffy. So many options. I just want more of this fight immediately. And just before we move away from Katakuri, we get confirmation through the Whole Cake Island cannon fodder that he is indeed the strongest of the Sweet Commanders. I mean, we already knew that because his bounty is the highest, but it's nice to have it somewhat officially spelt out, I guess. And that makes sense, because if he wasn't, I feel like most of the Charlotte family would know how to deal with Luffy in combat since their abilities are so similar. But since nobody is stronger than Katakuri, none of the Charlotte family are equipped to counter Luffy. It makes sense. And moving away from that fight to the rest of the crew, we have Jinbei taking on the role of acting vice captain here. Seriously, his dialogue sounds almost exactly like something Zoro would say in this situation. Don't let Pedro's sacrifice be in vain, and don't let your guard down until we've actually escaped. So once Jinbei officially joins, I think we might be able to add him to the list of crew members with the right of temporary captaincy, which both Sanji and Zoro have been shown to do in the past. And it makes sense. Jinbei is the oldest and the wisest of the current crew members. Wait, that's not even true actually. Brook is much older, but let's face it, he's essentially a child clothed in old bones. Elsewhere, Big Mom is still in hot pursuit thanks to Perospero creating a candy walkway for her across the seas. He had a funny line about having his candy arm melt while he was drinking tea, which is clearly going to be the most inconvenient thing about losing an arm and having to remake one with candy. I mean, he could just use the other arm for drinking tea, but that's absurd. And I'm not sure here, but we might be setting up a potential fight with Perospero and Carrot through this chapter. Carrot is clad in some very angry looking tears when she realizes the Perospero is also in pursuit of them. And he looks incredibly injured, so hey, it might come down to Carrot to deal the final blow for him in this arc and gain some closure on Pedro's sacrifice. I'm not opposed to that idea at all, and in fact it might even win me over to the Carrot for Nakama cause. But during this moment, Perospero does bring up a good point, in that where the hell is Zeus? Apparently he's usually responsible for taking Big Mom across the seas, so what is that funny little cloud doing? Well, he and Prometheus are just chilling. For no reason. They've both given up, and Prometheus just wants to eat some fire. I have no idea why the two of them aren't in active pursuit of the Straw Hats with Big Mom, and I do hope we get a semi-decent reason as to why, because this is just highly convenient at the moment. Oh, and right, I almost forgot about this, but we finally get to see Pound again this chapter. He has his own little reintroduction title, noting that he is the father of Lola and Chiffon, and you know what? That's probably necessary. The guy just disappeared for no reason, kind of like what Zeus and Prometheus are doing right now, actually. But even though we see Pound here, he's still pretty pointless, at least in this chapter. He spots Chiffon, and I'm sure he's going to follow them to Chocolate Town and end up either saving the group or stalling for time while the other Straw Hats arrive. He's got to have some purpose, but alas, it is not to be in this chapter. And now that we've gone through everything else, let's get to the low point of the chapter, and that is anything involving Pudding. She is a useless stock-standard high school anime girl character, and her gags are not landing, at least not with me. And that's all I have to say on that. Let's move on to something worth talking about finally, and that is the cover story. It looks like everything panned out the way I anticipated with Sai. He got the living hell beat out of him by Uholisha? Oh my god, however you say her name. And it looks like her father is scolding Don Chinjiao, who can really not do anything but make that classic Japanese oh well motion with his arm behind his head. I love the way Uholisha, I guess, is storming off in a comical manner in the background, and with that it looks like we have a conclusion to this part of Sai's cover story. And given how quickly this is panning out, I'm actually starting to think that the rest of this story might be his wedding to Baby 5. That or answering some questions about that evil-looking dude we saw in Kano Country. Or both. Either way, very much enjoying this segment. And that about does it for chapter 879. If you enjoyed this video, then please feel free to like, favorite, or subscribe, and leave me a comment with your thoughts on the chapter. This has been the Grand Line Review, and I'll see you next time.